Hi, in this video we're going to be covering replacing the pinion oil seals on the front bevel box on the Daimler Ferret. You can see here I've got an oil leak with the oil running down the floor, and that's leaking from this particular seal. So step one is to drain the oil from the bevel box. You can see very oily underneath the Ferret here because I need to replace the outer seals on this wheel station. You can see how to do that on my other videos. Haven't got around to this wheel station yet, but here's the drain plug removed. It's just got the hex type plug in on this one, and obviously you just need a suitable fitting to go in there and remove it. Here I'm just using a socket with the right hex head on it. Obviously if you were going to do this job on the pinion seals that are on the transfer box on the other end of these drive shafts, then you'll need to drain the oil from the transfer box itself before undertaking this. So step one is to undo the drive shaft. There's 4 bolts that hold it on, usually done up extremely tight. So I've used the old trick here in the tight confines of joining a couple of spanners together to give the leverage needed to slacken these nuts off, and then I can carry on and remove the nuts and bolts around the drive shaft here. So access can be quite tight for some of these nuts and bolts around the drive shaft. You should mostly be able to get on them with a pair of spanners, but if you do have trouble with access, there's a couple of options. You can jack up one side of the vehicle, and that will allow you to rotate the wheels and thus the drive shaft on one side, and bring the bolts round so you can access them. The other option, which I've used in this case, is to use a socket and some long extensions to get down next to the drive shaft and access those hard to reach bolts. So I told you it was a tight access there, just smashed into the camera. So we'll get these nuts and bolts removed. So you can see I've used a few long extensions. These happen to be wobble bars, but just straight extensions would do equally well. So it just gives us access down underneath for this hard to reach bolt, so we can get that cracked off and remove the last one. So that's the last bolt removed. And I'll just remove this bit of tissue I've got under here just to collect the oil that was leaking. Tap, and that separates the drive shaft. Just like that, so quite straightforward. So you can see I've got the covers and the internal tin work removed to access the drive shaft there. So now we've got that removed, what we can do is access the nut on the inside here. It's got a cotter pin in there that prevents the nut from working loose. So we just have to remove that, and then we can undo the carcellated nut inside. As I was saying, you'll obviously need to remove any tin work inside the Ferret to get access to your drive shaft, depending on what end and what particular seal you're working on. And you can see here, just pop the handbrake on, which will help hold everything steady while we undo the carcellated nut in the middle there. It's usually extremely tight, so I'm going to put a large bar on it to get it undone, and having the handbrake on will stop the ferret from moving, riding up on any chocks or whatever you've got under the wheels, which is always a sensible thing to do when working on any of the running gear on the Ferret. Obviously weighs in between 3.5 4 tons depending on what model you've got, and you don't want to get that thing moving around. Okay, so just going to remove the central nut here. And now we can also let the handbrake back off and remove the cotter pin from the end of the handbrake joint for this particular side, because we're going to have to remove the bracket that holds the handbrake cable. So just remove the pin there. So the next step is to remove the bolts that hold the bracket on for the handbrake cable, and also these same bolts hold the end plate that contains the seal on the bevel box. So we've got to get that removed. Now, I did this a little bit backwards. It was quite late in the day when I was doing this, and I wasn't too sure how the actual pinion shaft was going to work on the end of the bevel box. So what I ended up doing was removing the various bolts for the handbrake bracket here and the end plate, working round the flanged section of the pinion shaft, which is much easier to remove and give yourself access. So you'll see that in a moment, that the actual flanged section can just be withdrawn off the shaft, giving you direct access to the the bolts. So what I did was stick a small drip tray underneath just to catch any oil that's remaining inside, remove fully the nut from the end, and then it can just be slowly withdrawn off the shaft like this. So you can see inside it's got a bit of old grease and that in there, and you can see this actually looked in quite good condition, no pitting or whatever on the shaft itself, so it's worth checking that there's nothing like that that's going to cause an issue with your seal, the new seal that you put in, actually sealing up. And you can see the seal in the end plate there, which we'll press out and put a new seal in. So that's the end plate removed. We can see the bearing inside, and we can see some of the old grease and whatnot there, so that all needs to be cleaned and tidied up. So obviously we need to get this tidied up. Need to clean the surface here, where we're going to add a little sealant when we replace the end plate on the bevel box, and we're also going to need to clean up the joint here, so we can put some fresh grease on when we put all this back together. So I've pressed a new seal in the end plate and given a bit of a tidy up, and we're ready to refit the end plate on. You can see the access to the bolts is very straightforward with the flange removed. So yeah, when you're taking it apart, you can make an easier job of it than I have here in my, as previously commented, and remove that flange off the shaft to get access to those bolts. So just reinstalling the pin here for handbrake cable. Replace the cotter pin in there. And put some fresh grease on the shaft here, ready for it to go back together. See, I've tidied this up a little bit as well. And again, check the surface of the shaft for make sure there's no pitting or anything like that that's going to cause a leak on the new seal. And we can reinstall the nut in the end. And this is going to have to be tightened up. Again, it goes on extremely tight. And once we've got that tightened up acceptably, and obviously we need to get the castellated nut aligned with the hole through the bolt, through the shaft, so we can get the cotter pin reinstalled. So that can take a little bit of adjustment to get that in the right place. And then we can put the cotter pin in and make sure it's installed properly to stop that nut from being able to come loose. And once we've got this done, we're pretty much there with the job complete. You just need to reinstall the drive shaft with the 4 bolts that you saw we took out earlier. And yeah, that's it. So hope you found it useful. And if you've got any hints or tips or comments on the video, please do leave them below so we can all benefit from a bit of collective wisdom. And yeah, if you like the video, please like and subscribe on YouTube. It really helps the channel. Thanks a lot.